What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and it is Saturday night, technically Sunday morning on March 14th. I just took a shower. My hair's still kind of wet. And I mentioned that because while I was in the shower, I decided, I was inspired to do a video describing what my philosophy for building an NFL team would be and what it is. And so, to be clear, I am focusing on how I would build a team, like an NFL roster, not really so much, a front office or like head coach or stuff like that. Because obviously those positions I would fill with people that, are like-minded and have the same philosophies as me. So I'm going to focus on just how I would build an NFL roster. So for this exercise, this philosophical exercise, I'm going to pretend that I am an expansion team, right? Or just, a very, very fresh new team, right? So, my base philosophy, my core philosophy is that, I would want to build a team primarily through the draft, very little supplemental, cherry picking or whatever from free agency. I would not be a big spender in free agency. I would take maybe, a handful of guys each season from free agency. And they would be, they would never be from the top of the barrel. They would always be middle to low, or bottom of the barrel, so to speak, right? They would never be the big fish or the high price free agent. And I would always be trying to build my team base philosophy from a standpoint of being as young as possible, as cheap as possible, generally speaking, whatever. But that really ultimately doesn't matter in how I would structure things, but I'll get to that. And this is just assuming I have 100% control of how I operate my team and, how I pay people, and so on and so forth, right? So anyway, as young as possible, as cheap as possible with as high as upside, right? So I would never pay the big fish. I would always be looking middle to the bottom for those kinds of players. And obviously the draft would be the same way. I would have my draft picks, and then I would definitely take a bunch of guys from, as undrafted free agents. I would have, a probably decent sized undrafted free agent pool each season. And then, I would take guys occasionally off of waiver wires and stuff like that too, whatever, claim guys. Obviously I would make those kinds of transactions, maybe occasionally do a trade, although I probably wouldn't be a huge trading kind of person, GM, whatever. And if anything, it would probably be more so like, draft capital wise, and I would trade back to accumulate more, right? So young, cheap, high upside in both the draft and free agency. And, the draft would be my primary focus. Now, when it comes to players, what is important to me? Here's what's important to me. Obviously, production, work ethic, leadership, stuff like that. All of that, right? I personally would not really take people or players with, major, off the field issues. So there are certain things I would never touch. If they have like some kind of domestic abuse or abuse prior or history, I just wouldn't take those guys. Some things, if like smoking weed, I don't give a fuck about that. That would never be a thing that I look bad at, right? But maybe if they stole some things and have some juvie records or whatever, like who cares, whatever, I don't give a fuck. Like I mean I do, but those are the kinds of guys that, and there's a varying, there's a variety of different things that would fall under this category of, okay, you can have a chance if you can prove to me that you've come past that, whatever, right? So those types of things that I would care about. Now, the reason why a lot of this is important is because of how I would structure my team. Now, I'm gonna start off right off the bat. Obviously, I'm not a GM, I'm not an insider, I'm not a coach or anything like that. So and I'm not a front office guy, so I don't know 100% how it works. But like I said, this is assuming I had 100% control of how everything works. So the way I would structure my team is, I would even tell all of the players that I bring in, listen, these are the things that are important. Oh, loyalty, that's another one, right? Like, and teamsmanship, right? Team first, right? Kind of mentality, those types of things. Because the way that I would structure my paying of the players is I would have a system set up in which you have 100% of the pool, right? So you have the salary cap, whatever the salary cap is set, that's 100% of your pay pool. And then I would take off the off the top, I don't know, I'm just going to use, for some of this, I'm just going to use random, arbitrary, off the top kind of numbers. So let's say 15 or 20% off the top, I would take right away. And what that 15 to 20% of the salary cap would be dedicated for is primarily the expanded roster, right? So everything after 63, right? Because you have your 53 you have your base 53 man roster and your 10 man practice squad, and then you expand for training camp. So that 15% or 10 to 20%, let's say, whatever the most efficient calculation would work out as, would be to pay those the expanded roster players, so the camp bodies, and then also it would be a base amount of money that you would carry over to the next season, so that way you're not just spending everything that you have and going completely broke, right? You would always have a little bit of carryover. It would give you wiggle room and contracts and stuff like that, right? So you would take that 10 to 20% off the top of the whatever the base salary cap is each year. So it's base salary cap, minus the 20% for those things, and then the 10 to 20%. And then the other 80 to 90% is then what you pay your top 63 players, right? So that's your 53 man roster and your 10 man practice squad. And the way I would do it is excuse me, I would have it ranked. I would also explain to players, and this would tie into my free agency and draft philosophies, is I don't care about position, okay? So in other words, I am not going to have the quarterback is the most important thing, whatever. I would say, because my philosophy is to build a well-rounded team. So, and I would tell this, I would be super transparent with all my players, and I would even show them the numbers. I would, in discussions with them and their agents, I would tell them, look, here are the numbers of salary cap. Here's how we, do everything. I would give them full breakdown. But the way I would do it is that 80 to 90% of the salary cap that's for the top 63 players, they would all be ranked, right? So the number one player, right, or the player at the top of the list is the highest paid player, and the player at the bottom of the list, the 63rd spot, is the lowest paid. Now, the way that is determined, again, position doesn't matter. I don't rank positions because there's always got to be 11 guys on the field. You got to have a 53-man roster because you need an offense, you need a defense, you need special teams, and you need backups, right? Because people do get injured, players do get injured. Every single player on that team is, in my mind, just as important as the rest. So the way that I would do it is the way that you get ranked. Your value is you get a ranking for things like I said, leadership. Are you on time? What are your study habits? What are your on the field and practice habits? Your production, right? All of those things. Off the field, right? Like, are you doing well off the field? Like, do you, like, as long as you're going to get a high rank in that, as long as you don't get yourself in trouble, pretty much. But you can obviously, it's good if you also do things for the community and stuff as well, right? But you would get scores in all of these different categories, and then your cumulative score ranked with your teammates would determine your slot in the 63 pay slots that are available for the entire roster. And the player that's at the top, the number one, it doesn't matter what the position is. So if your team is, if you're an expansion team, maybe your punter is your fucking top guy. He would get paid the most. But you wouldn't have contracts. You wouldn't have crazy contracts of like, one player getting such a large portion of the cap where they're making like, 150 million a year with like 25, 30 million, or, 150 million for their contract and like 20 to 30 million a year, right? Like, no, that's crazy. What it would be is the top guy would be getting like, maybe, I don't know, again, arbitrary numbers because I don't know exactly how it would play out, but maybe like I don't know. Again, it's super arbitrary. So I hope people don't focus too much on the numbers that I'm giving, because I don't know what the exact calculations would pan out to be, because it's determinative on a bunch of different factors, the base, salary cap with all these other things, whatever, and then whatever. But each of those slots would be, a certain percentage of the overall salary cap that is designated for the base roster and the practice squad, and then based off of all those determinative factors of leadership and production and so on and so forth. I don't care about position or draft status. Those things are not important, right? It's all the other stuff, and then you fall into that, and then that's how you get paid. And the top guy, I don't know, again, arbitrary number, but like 5 to 8 million a year, and then it just scales, right, as you go down the list, and it would be very small and incremental, so the pay difference actually wouldn't even be that much, and everybody would get their equal share. And so part of what I would tell players when they come in is look, this is what I want, and I would be very upfront and honest with them. I'd be like, look, even if you become a superstar, which we want you to be, right, we hope that you are, and we're going to help you to get there, but you're going to get paid in your slot, right? And we're going to explain the whole system to them, and we're going to be like, look, you might be the best at your position in the league, right? And your performance will be graded not just off of the statistics like yards and so on and so forth, but you would obviously be compared to the league averages, and then where you place on that. So your production performance score, for on the field, is determined then by your positioning in the league, right? And then other determinative factors that would be relevant as well, whatever. But you get the point, right? and then so you're going to get paid like that, right? And that will determine your portion of our cap pie that you get, right? And so loyalty is super important, because we want to build a team for long-term success. I don't want my roster to be completely changing, every year. I want guys to be here for a long time, right? Or at least the majority of the roster. I want the majority of the roster to be basically settled at all times, right? Because that's what's going to give, that's one of the things that's going to, because you're going to have the best chemistry and cohesion with guys, right? And those are going to be the things to give you, and then if you have an entire roster of guys that are, good quality guys, that are good off the field, that are producing for you, right? That are team guys, that are leadership guys, and all of these factors come in, that's what's going to give you sustainable success, right? And so you're going to tell these guys, look, that's what we want, and we want to build a championship, because we want to have a bunch of really good guys on the team, that can really, push the edge of competitiveness and fucking and really challenge, right? And so every year for division titles and for championships, right, conference titles and the Super Bowl, right? And so that's the makeup of it. That's how you do it. You build through the draft primarily. You do supplement in free agency, but to me, that's how you would do it. You don't care about position. You don't care about draft status. You just want a bunch of really good guys, and you would pay them like that, right? Based off of factors that are important, not stupid bullshit like, oh, he's a quarterback, so he's automatically higher ranked than fucking everybody else. And again, don't get me wrong, like, I understand, that having those guys can, help to make your team special. I get that. And obviously that would go into their evaluation, right? So it's not uncommon, I would say, that quarterbacks probably would be your highest paid player in that, example that I gave, and how I would break down the pay scale, right? So it likely it likely would be, right? Because I mean, if you have a Patrick Mahomes or a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers, their impact on the team, probably across the board is obviously substantial from a leadership standpoint, from a, off the field standpoint. They're obviously going to get, high ranks across the board. Think of it like this. Think of it like it's Madden, right? In each of those categories, their on the field performance, their off the field performance, their leadership, right? Their punctuality, right? All of these different things. They are going to think of them as if they are just a player's stats in Madden, right? Because in Madden they have like speed and fucking, I don't know, whatever. I don't really play Madden. So, but, right, they have stat breakdowns. So just think of it like that. Those are the players' stat breakdowns, and that's how you get their value. And then they get their Madden score or whatever, their team score based off of those things, and that's where they fall in the ranks, right? And so you're not going to have a team of, the highest paid players in the league, but you're going to have a bunch of really good guys on the team that have really good team chemistry, cohesion, that, love playing with each other, that love playing for the organization. There's a great culture, right? It's going to be an environment in which they can thrive, and it's built on, building through the draft, getting, the youngest, most high upside talent. You're going to try and steer away from, guys who have character flaws or issues. Obviously, it depends. I mean, if they smoke weed, I don't care about that at all. If they beat their girlfriend, that is, unacceptable to me, right? So there's a range there, and that's how I would do it, honestly. That is my philosophy. And to be quite honest, I am surprised that I was able to keep it in such a short time frame. I thought I was going to go on forever. But yeah, I mean, really, honestly, that's what I think. That's what I feel. I think that's the best way to do it. And now I'm actually entering the portion, though, where I'm going to, like, sit here and rack my brain to make sure that I don't forget anything or didn't forget anything. But that really is my philosophy, and it's pretty simple. And I think that's the way to do it. Again, no big spenders in free agency, primary through the draft, supplement through the free agency, and then that you would structure your team in such a way where you don't put positions higher, because it's a team sport. It just is, man. It just is. And I don't care how great the quarterback is. They can't do those great things without an offensive line in front of them. They just can't. They can't do it without running backs and wide receivers. They're not throwing the ball to themselves, right? So it's a team sport. You have to build a team, and you have super important things to take into consideration, right? So cap, how do you divvy that up appropriately to the players that you have? And I think that's the most fair and equitable way to do it. You have just pay slots, and based on those slots is how much you get paid. And they're actually all really close in pay scale, because you have the top 80 to 90% of the top 80-90% of the cap dedicated to those 63 players. And then there's a mathematical equation that says, okay, there's a way to say that there's a ranking scale in which the person at the top is the highest paid, but it's a fair and equitable distribution of that 80 to 90% of the cap space. Whatever. I think you guys get the point. I don't want to repeat myself. You guys understand. So I think people will understand. So I would like to think I did a relatively decent job at explaining that. And that is my philosophy. So with that, I am going to get out of here. I hope you guys appreciate my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.